There's an undeniable technology shift to the extent that anyone had any illusions last year that this wasn't real, that is this really happening? Is this just another hype wave? I think that is gone. I think everyone understands that value, and a lot of value will be created both in publics and in private companies by investing in AI infrastructure, and the AI application layer. We're coming into this year with enough of the Lego blocks in place, if you will, that the focus is starting to shift toward application layer companies. And so there's, I think, a lot of excitement in the venture community in terms of investing in consumer AI, investing in enterprise software, investing in vertical SaaS with AI as well.
All right, welcome back to OK Computer. I am Dan Nathan. I am joined for our Funder and Founders series with Ann Bordetsky. She is a partner at NEA, and Aravind Srinivas. He is the CEO and founder at Perplexity. People, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having us, Dan.
Yeah, this is great, guys. So listen, Ann, you and I spoke, I think it was about a year ago on the pod. We were talking about the landscape for AI. We had just, I think a month or two after the release of ChatGPT 3.5, you actually had a great quote from me. You called it a magical moment for tech. And we're going to hit that. We're going to hit your firm's interest in the space and kind of some of the investments that you've made. But obviously, we're going to focus a bit on Perplexity. This is, a company that you led the A round. They've since done a B round, I think, in the last month or so, and we'll talk about that. Aravind, really great to meet you. Ann and I were talking before we turned the mics on. It's not too often that someone like myself, who's generally focused on the public markets, gets to meet an early stage founder of a product that I'm using every day and happen to like a whole heck of a lot. And so we got connected through Ann because we were talking about your company on CNBC's Fast Money, and you took some issue, I think, with some of the stuff that I had to say on the product. So we're gonna flesh all that out right here, all right? And maybe who knows, you'll come on Fast Money and you'll set me straight. But first things first. So this Funders and Founders series, we're definitely going to talk a little bit about the relationship that, let's say, NEA has with Perplexity, and you in particular as the founder. We want to obviously talk about the landscape, but let's first talk about your background here. You are a PhD. You came over here, I think, 6 or 7 years ago to work on AI. It was not that particularly popular of a space then. Talk to me a little bit about your background and how you got to the founding of this company.
Yeah, I come from India, and I came to the United States in 2017. PhD was actually more like an excuse to get here. I really wanted to be in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley where all the action was. But I was very passionate about AI research too. And I think AI was sort of a thing that was just beginning to work. Like DeepMind was pretty hot. OpenAI but they were it was a research phase, right? So the competition for getting a PhD admission top institute like Berkeley was pretty high, but there was no it's not like you would find the flagship conference like New Europe's being attended more by VCs than academics like it is today. It's completely changed over now. Now, I would say I was pretty excited when I got to intern at OpenAI and DeepMind. I could clearly see these guys were building the future, but no one at that time predicted anything like what we are experiencing today. That was all happened in the 2020 or 21 when GPTs began to take off. And throughout my PhD, I always was motivated by trying to convert an academic background into entrepreneurship, which was a lot more non-trivial at that time. Now it's sort of changed. Investors just want to go fund the best researchers who are looking to leave these labs. But back then it was nah, oh, you're the guy who's going to write ML code for me, that sort of a moment. And I didn't get any right opportunity, but I was very inspired by the founding story of Google, which was the only entrepreneurs I could see in front of my own eyes that were academics turned entrepreneurs. And little did I expect that the company itself would become a search engine, or I would rather say answer engine, in the same space. That was completely unexpected. But I guess that's what they say, right? The dots connect in hindsight. Stuff that you're really passionate about will somehow flow into all the work that you're doing. and passion for search has always been there for me and my co-founders.
So, and Arvind just said something really interesting. You, as a former operator, you were at a bunch of consumer-facing companies, tech companies that became very successful. But what he said about academics becoming entrepreneurs, there weren't too many examples of that. Now, you, as a venture capitalist, very focused on this space, like, are you finding it a kind of an interesting juxtaposition to this kind of prior phase of early tech investing?
Yeah, look, the best advice, and someone gave me this advice about a year ago when AI started getting really hot, is the best investor advice I got was just make sure you don't spend $100 million on somebody to redo their PhD thesis, right?
Yeah.
And what's been so exciting about this year and working with founders like Arvind is there's incredible technical depth that is required in order to build exciting new consumer application companies, disruptive AI software companies. And so we do spend a lot of time with founders who come from an academic background or have done, frontier kind of research at Google, at OpenAI, right, within the other sort of dominant AI labs, if you will, in the industry. But I think Arvind was being humble earlier about, my experience working with you, Arvind, is that you are actually very, very intentional. And I think you're an amazing example of someone who took inspiration from what you were seeing, both in terms of Google and AI, and you turned that inspiration into action and into a product that people absolutely love. So when we first met Arvind a year ago, a little over a year ago, probably now, it was so obvious that you had a vision for how to recreate search using LLMs, using AI, the hustle that the Perplexity team and Arvind in particular, tiny team, 3 people within 3 months built an incredible product where when you used it for the first time, it was like using ChatGPT. It was that same kind of like, wow, moment of magic. This is something special, right? And so going back to that magic moment that we talked about a year ago, like my second magic moment was actually using Perplexity for the first time. And I think from there, the product has just gotten better and better and better. So I think, academic background is essential in AI in many ways, but you need to combine that with design, with user experience, with real passion for building a product that is delightful and habit forming in the way that Perplexity has become.
I remember when we pitched to NEA, and Anne was there in the big room of like all the partners were sitting in the room, and our pitch was like, "Hey, give us $10 to $15 million. Like that's all we were asking for." And then they came and told us, "We think you might be needing more than that. Why don't you take $20 million?" And like that ended up being our fundraise. Like they invested 20, and like a few others put on 5, and we raised $25 million. That was our first venture round. Before that, we had raised a smaller seed round of like 2 to 3 million. So we were like not looking for a lot of cash. Our basic pitch was, look, we never set out to build a consumer company. We tried this experiment of LLM powered searches that just give you answers with citations, and it's beginning to take off. We were initially of the opinion that like few enterprises will reach out to us and we'll power the search over their internal data and build a business. But it turns out the consumer part itself is continuing to grow without us actually doing anything. It's just word of mouth marketing. And so there's something here. We want to see if this is even more deeper. And for that, we need some amount of money because, who's going to keep serving the product? Are you interested in like this journey together? And they were like, we don't think of you as like you versus Google. We think of you as like a very new version of Wikipedia or Reddit. That was actually Anne who said this. I remember still in the room full, like a lot of people were asking different questions about how would you compete with Google, how would you compete with Microsoft. Anne was like, "Hey guys, listen, they're actually like orthogonal. Don't see them as another search engine." And then that plus their belief in putting more capital than what we asked made it clear to us that NEA was going to be a great long-term partner. Like in it's, like we started, I mean, sure, it's just been a year since we started working together, but I'm sure we'll be working together for many more years. And there are very few venture firms that have like this sort of long-term partnership mentality. And NEA and AN are like very special that way.
Yeah, so Aravind, that's interesting that experience for you raising that capital. When you think about your time at OpenAI, I'm assuming that you were not involved in that process, but it was a very different process. And today it hits the tape that Elon Musk, one of the founders of that organization, is suing Sam Altman, and we know the whole mess. We don't have to go through all of that, but they sidestepped that whole Sand Hill Road sort of process and everything like that at the early stage. Did you learn anything at OpenAI about entrepreneurship away from what you were doing or in charge to do there, technically? I'm just curious, what was the atmosphere like in and around that?
I mean, I didn't learn anything about fundraising. Obviously, there's not much to learn from Sam Altman about fundraising. It's like saying, what do you learn from like the best investor on how to raise money? They're not going to have difficulty raising money. So I learned a lot about the importance of fast iteration there. And I also learned a lot about giving a lot of empowerment to like very highly capable individual contributors and trusting them to make great decisions of their own and not trying to micro lead then micromanage. These are things that I learned a lot at OpenAI. I think their leadership style really emphasizes speed and bias to action. Like that was novel for a research lab, right? And even though Perplexity was not a research lab, myself and like my co-founder Dennis, who's my CTO, we come from a research background, right? So in research, the mentality is to experiment and take things slow and like try to identify a big new thing. And OpenAI brought in a novelty to that space where like, look, you are here to experiment, you are here to try new things. All I want to make sure is you try things fast, you learn things fast, you fail fast, and get things out. Get people to actually use your stuff. In academia, the mentality is create an evaluation set and monitor the evaluation set, the benchmark that everybody uses. And OpenAI comes and says like, no, I'm just going to directly let a user play with this AI, and I get to learn more. Let them break it in all the ways they can, and like that's the best way to benchmark things. That's what you get by actually rolling it out to production. And whether it's called a prototype or production doesn't matter. It sort of blurs the boundaries between a prototype and production. ChatGPT was meant as a research prototype, but then it became a product in like a month, right? Perplexity was just meant as an early prototype of what search engines could look like, but then the usage kept going up that we just committed to making it a product. So these are things I really learned a lot there.
If we look back at the early days of Facebook, right? The early days of Uber, these iconic consumer companies of the internet era, right? And the mobile era, what they had in common was this culture of entrepreneurship, moving incredibly fast, testing, iterating. And I think in many ways, Perplexity has elements of those cultures sort of authentically in the company and in the way that the team operates, right? Move fast, iterate on product, ship new features. This team ships so fast. And people often ask me, what is Perplexity's secret sauce? Why are they growing so fast? Like, what is that team doing that I can actually replicate? And the things that they're getting really right is speed. It's the velocity of learning, the velocity of shipping new product, the velocity of sort of building mind share with consumers. And, I think their pace is, a completely different from an academic lab. And Aravind is quietly a complete beast who is so intense. He's on all hours of the day and night. And I know the rest of the team is too. And so I think, Perplexity is moving and building and culturally approaching designing product in ways that are very similar to what we saw in the early days of Uber and Facebook, which makes it super exciting for us.
Yeah, let's talk about the product. And just in case there's anyone who's listening, and I doubt they are, who don't know what it is. It's funny because I said I'm a user. I'm very happy with it. I'm paying $20 a month to search the internet, something that for 20 years I've basically taken for granted because I've gone to this white page with a little box sitting in the middle of it, and I've done that. Now, I've had to sift through lots of blue links. I generally feel pretty confident in the quality of the results that come out. That's the kind of behavior. It turned into a verb, and we might have to talk about your name, bud, because I'm not sure we can perplexity something, but we'll work on that. Maybe that's for our next pod here a little bit. But let's talk about the product. Let's talk about how you have. It seems like lots of people paying to do something like I just said they've been doing for an awful long time. And then let's kind of differentiate a little bit from some of the things that have kind of made it, I think, the fact that we are actually talking about perplexity because, these chatbots are not exactly what you have built.
The best way to describe the product is, first of all, for 2 decades, all of us have always had questions, but never been able to ask directly the question. Instead, what we do is we type keywords into our favorite search engine for the last 2 years, Google, and that used to give us very accurate ordered 10 blue links first. After a while, it started getting added ads like somewhere in the middle, but in like smaller font. Now it's just ads and links are all like interspersed with each other, like same font size. Nobody knows like what the ordering is. And add to that like SEO and like very low quality content. So that is the current internet today. And you open a link, there's a lot of pop-ups, ads, and on the news side, and like by the time you scroll, you're like, damn, like I already wasted 5 minutes and I still don't know what exactly I was trying to get. Instead, now you have this ability that you can go to a computer or a website or tool and ask it the exact question that you had in your mind to start with. You don't have to type in keywords, and you get the answer in an instant. And you also get sources. You're told exactly where the information for the answer is being pulled from at the level of each sentence, that level of granularity. And you're encouraged to ask follow-ups in case you want to engage more in a conversation. It's almost like you're talking to your library, you're talking to the index of the internet. You're talking to like a very well packaged index of the internet, as if that was a person. You're talking to this oracle, right? That is perplexity. And now, given this new ability, it takes a while to adjust. Hey, like, what do I do with this? Your behavior is still to type in 1 word or 2 words. So obviously people will get more and more adjusted to this new form factor once they start interacting with voices and things like that. But it saves you a ton of time you spend on browsing, typically sifting through links, wasting time clicking on irrelevant links. That's what you're paying for essentially through the $20 a month.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So, I just did this, and again, Perplexity is going to take one of my jobs away, which would be podcasting. I went to Perplexity Pro. I put in there, what should I ask the CEO of Perplexity for a podcast? It just gave me a lot of great questions. And we have a really smart team who works with us here and everything like that. There's just lots of tasks, and it's all, sourced really well. There's video, there's links, there's, news reports and the like here. And so I feel it's one of those experiences that, Anne used the term magic. It is kind of an aha moment for people who are going beyond just looking for the best pizza shop in the neighborhood or this and that or whatever. And talk to me a little bit about how you want to put this product where it is right now relative to, let's say, and this goes back to the conversation you and I had in January of 2023. We were talking about, okay, where is most of the value near term going to be accrued as it's an arms race, right, for these products, coming to market. And we talked about the big platform companies. We talked about the cloud companies and the like here. When you see where this product is now, a year after your investment, how would you kind of, how is this upstart stacking up against some of these big, behemoth incumbents?
Well, when I think about products, I start with the end user in mind. And, Perplexity's role in this new kind of AI frontier is that it can fundamentally address the challenges that we deal with in our, modern lives. There's so much digital clutter. There's so much information there's so many different, communication entry points, right? And I think the beauty of Perplexity and what the team has executed on so well is sort of simplifying all of that into this answer engine experience. I mean, it is radical that you could just ask a question and go directly to an answer, right? The simplicity of the UI combined with the speed and trustworthiness of the answer is really, really powerful. It can save us time. It can connect us to better information, and where we can go from here is kind of limitless, right? And it does feel different than traditional search, the way that we can engage with it. And I know we talk about magic, but I think something Arvind and I talk a lot about is the value of trust. In a world where we have a proliferation of synthetic media, AI, generated information, there's hallucinations that are natural in LLM powered experiences. How do we build trust with users? Trust is very important when it comes to information. And I think that's a core value for Perplexity, and something the team is really designing for. In terms of our expectations, like, we're thrilled. Honestly, I think Perplexity has just seized the moment. What we've seen from Perplexity in the past year is remarkable user growth, going from essentially 0 to 10 million active users in less than 12 months, which is absolutely remarkable amidst so many other AI apps. And I think really being smart about taking advantage of the user interest in AI that ChatGPT has generated, right? ChatGPT sort of created that zeitgeist moment, and Perplexity is coming in and really delivering the, delightful daily experience for search that so many other people want to see. Of course, the holy grail is having a daily co-pilot, right? That AI assistant, that Jarvis that we all imagine and dream about that will make us more productive. And so we're starting with an answer engine, but I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I'll let Arvind speak to this, to build trust with users, but then really develop Perplexity into, a habit forming, daily trusted co-pilot for their lives.
When ChatGPT came out, everyone had a lot of fun with it. The number one thing they realized that it makes up references, it arbitrarily makes up facts. How can I trust this? How is this going to be a replacement to like my day-to-day source of information, which happens to be Google? Even though this is a lot more efficient, I can't trust this. And then a week later, we came out, we said, hey, there is a way we can be best of both worlds. We will give you a conversational experience where you just get the answers, but we'll bring our academic roots. There are two professions in this world that where you're not allowed to say something without actually a citation. One is academia, and the other is journalism. Everything you say in a paper, you actually need to back it up with a peer-reviewed article or like a very multiple time checked evidence, right? And we brought in that principle. We foundationally baked in that principle into the chatbot. We told the chatbot, hey, you're not allowed to say anything unless you can actually have a source backing it up. I'm not saying this is 100% like work and the problem of misinformation is solved. There are still places where Perplexity sometimes confuses two people with the same name and like mashes things into one and stuff like that. And those will be addressed through like, better AI training and like better expansion of the index and like teaching all these mistakes of the model and stuff. But it already has gotten the 80-20 or 90-10 in terms of like perfecting an accurate answer with reliable sources. That idea of planting sources at the top is almost like Wikipedia and ChatGPT had a baby, but except the data came from the whole internet. And that helped us to build a much more trustworthy source of information for the user compared to like other services like Bard or ChatGPT.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So let's talk about search here for a second, because everyone knows for 20 years, at Google, Alphabet, has just dominated, right? And so they have this monopoly of a market share. There's been no shortages of big competitors, small competitors. They've all fallen down by the wayside. And so when you think about just Microsoft, how quickly they moved to secure access, right, to OpenAI technology. It was obviously about their cloud. It was obviously about Bing. It was obviously across their productivity tools, right? And that company has seen massive appreciation in the stock market since Ann and I last talked. A year and change ago, it's up 70%. That's over $1 trillion in market cap. We've seen obviously Google has appreciated pretty nicely, despite the fact Bard's been an absolute disaster, and Gemini, the rollout and the rebranding has not gone particularly well, as look at Nvidia, which is obviously powering a lot of the training of these LLMs and the like, and that has gained $8.5 trillion in market cap. I mean, we're using the T word here, people, right? So like when you think about this, it's also interesting to note in the stock market, right now, Apple is down 10% from its recent all-time highs. Why? They don't have a Gen AI strategy. People are waiting for their developers conference. Google, Alphabet, the stock is down 10% since its highs just a month ago because of the issues that they've had here. So when I think about what you're doing, when you have people like Ann and myself, and obviously Ann is all in on this one, but like lots of people we know are using this product. I've used this on Fast Money. I've used it on our pods. People are talking about your company right now the way they were talking about Google 20 years ago, about the incumbents that they were taking on in a way. And so I find that pretty fascinating. But I also say to myself, you better watch your ass, man, because, if you're Apple and they don't have a Gen AI strategy, you might find yourself working in a room in Cupertino in the not so distant future, because I can't think of think about this, right? So, Google has this deal with Apple, right? So for search on Safari. And at some point, if, this whole thing of Gemini is to obviously cannibalize themselves, if they know everybody else is coming at them, sooner or later, every platform company is going to be in the game. So I'm just curious, how you think about that. We're focused on these shiny chatbots right now, but it really is about Google's search market share. Is that fair, Aravind?
So it's not 100% how I think about it. I think the best thing we've done is to create a new category of answer bots and chat bots, not compete in the search engine market share. The search engine market share is not really going to change. That really is just all about like Google paying Apple and Samsung and all these people, and they'll continue to pay that because it's just based on like several decades of like business model revenue sharing mechanisms. But when the value of the platform goes down, that's when the whole thing is threatened. And how is the value going to go down? The value is not going to go down suddenly one day where like all the users have just flocked to something else. I think it's going to start at the head of the distribution. Think of like search engine market share as like demographically, user wise, country wise. It's not going to be a uniform distribution. It's going to be a long tail distribution where there's a head that generates most of the value for the advertiser, for the business that owns the platform where searches are taking place. And those users are usually the high paying users in high GDP countries who actually care about their time, who actually care about their productivity. Like a big fraction of knowledge workers are going to be in the head of the distribution. Now, if those people are beginning to do their deep research elsewhere, at least starting with whatever searches they do during work time, and maybe expands to searches they do in their personal life beyond work too, then you're losing only a small fraction of the day-to-day search volume you're getting. Your traffic doesn't go down tremendously. So if you're tracking similar web or something, you're not going to have a big impact immediately. But the stuff that's going away is going away from the most valuable part of your traffic. And then like looking at the high earning people, the next segment, the next part of the distribution are going to be like, oh, the people who care about their time are all doing this. I mean, I also want to care about my time. I also want to like be like them, and like they're also going to start using the tools that actually are going to give them back their time and give them more knowledge and productivity gains, right? So that's how we see our strategy, is just like slowly eat into the knowledge and productivity and researches, deep researches people are doing at the head of the distribution in the high income countries or high paying potential countries. And and then like people will begin to notice. We're going to make a lot of subscription revenue through that anyway. And like what happens is that the advertisers will begin to notice too. It's the same users who advertisers also want, right? Advertisers want them, and they're going to be like, hey, sure, your stats are all amazing, but you're not having these really big category of users that I want to buy my products anymore. At least they're not using your platform as much anymore. So I order you to bring the cost per click and the cost per view down. So that's going to reduce Google's margins. So it's more like your margin is my opportunity sort of a situation here.
If you look at what's happening right now as a snapshot in time, it looks as if the big tech players, Google included, have infinite resources, right? Infinite resources to invest in AI, to defend themselves. But let's remember, 50% of product search now happens on Amazon. Amazon very effectively pulled away product search from Google. Pinterest pulled away image search, right? TikTok is where, like it or not, Gen Z searches for trends and information, right? So, search is not monolithic. And although Google has a dominant market share today, I think by creating new categories of products and also understanding, which sort of search experiences can be radically improved with AI, you can start to sort of unbundle what Google search represents today. I think the real challenge for Google is not its resources, it's organizational complexity. It's the fact that they're trapped in the classic innovator's dilemma, right? And they know it, right? They're smart people. They know this. They're trapped in the innovator's dilemma. And so when people are trapped there, like, why does it persist? And it will persist because they are a 50,000 person company with a deeply rooted culture at this point. And it's just really hard to turn such a massive ship. They will try. But I think, the focused, fast moving challenger, right? Like Perplexity can build something entirely new, even as Google tries its best to defend its position.
Well, think about it this way, okay? So, and we're kind of identifying two really big issues for two of the largest publicly traded tech companies in the world, which is Apple and Google. And let me just break it down this way, all right? So, if Google has nearly, $300 billion in sales. We know where most of those sales come from, right? We've just talked a bit about that. This is a company that had 70% gross margins, 4 years ago, expected to have near 61% right now. So everything you just talked about, Aravind, is really important. So think about Apple on the other side of this, okay? When you talk about these high-end users, well, it's an iOS user who's likely to actually download your app and pay $20 a month for Pro. And if they're getting tens of billions of dollars in search fees, right? This is really high margin for them, right? You know what I mean? And that search business is going to be denigrated by, like the way Ann just laid it out, and products like yours. Well, then Apple has a problem too, because some of their highest margin stuff that they don't do anything for other than actually have a dedicated search provider within Safari. If iOS users start paying $20 a month for Perplexity, right, they're going to be cannibalizing that very high margin revenue on the other side. So I guess
they still make 30% of that,
for now, not in Europe. I mean, but think about that. Like in Europe, they might not, right, soon, and they might not here in the US. But literally, we've just identified, $5 trillion in market cap, $800 billion in annual sales that are some of the highest margin stuff that they get is actually, your company and others like it actually pose a huge in my opinion, this is a huge problem for them.
I mean, definitely. Though for what it's worth, Apple you can argue that Apple can sell even more phones at even better prices if they natively embed AI in their phones and solve the problem. So I think the worry is more for Google. And again, like I said, it's not that Google as an empire will come crumbling down because of all this pressure. It's more that whatever is going to be their next $500 billion or $1 trillion in market cap, that is where those additional profits, that additional increase in the market cap is not just going to be enjoyed by them. Whatever is going to be generated by AI is being shared by many other players in this market. And we are happy to have a small share there. That's a huge outcome for us already. Whereas for them, missing out on this not being a monopoly will impact their share of profits as well as their perception. I mean, market cap is also a lot about optics, right? Like earlier, if you wanted to invest in AI in the public market, you would only invest in Google. There's no other company. Now you would invest in Nvidia, you would invest in Meta, you would invest in Microsoft, right? So there are like so many other players in the market that you think are AI leaders, or like at least leaders in the sense they're guaranteed to get most of the profits from whatever's being generated in AI. So if you look at OpenAI is making like billions of dollars in revenue. Where's most of that money going to? It's going to Azure and it's going to Nvidia, right? I mean, like similarly for us, like we spend a lot of money on AWS, we spend a lot of money on Azure. It's going a lot to these cloud infrastructure companies. Whatever additional profits are being generated in AI, it's not going to Alphabet, the mothership of AI. It used to be the mothership of AI. It's not going there, and it's not increasing the ad revenue. So that's the cost for concern there. Their market cap's not going to all come down, but it's not going to like they're not going to dramatically benefit from this new AI wave as much as the other like big tech.
Let's quickly hit. You talked about. I think Ann said monthly actives over what 10 million, and I'm sure it's rapidly increasing. So you have the pro. So you have a subscription revenue coming up. What are some of the other revenue sources that you guys are focused on right now?
Yeah, we also have announced our APIs for developers that give access to large language model APIs, chat in form of chat LLMs that will always be plugged into our index, so they'll never have a knowledge cutoff like OpenAI's APIs or Anthropic's APIs. So that way you can build a lot more accurate chatbots that have like live up to date information, and we're going to like expand access to that, and that's going to give us a separate stream of revenue. We're only going to focus on these two for now and not venture into advertising yet. We're going to wait to grow even more in terms of user base before trying any advertisement experiments.
So, Ann, just to kind of maybe cap this off, you guys obviously have been looking at the AI space for a while. I know that it's obviously been transformed in the last 18 months or so. It seems about as exciting of a time in both private and public markets as far as tech is concerned that I can remember in a very long time. Give us a little vibe check here. What's it like in the Valley right now? Because, as I'm sitting here looking at my screens, I see these stocks absolutely screaming, on a day. NVIDIA is up 65% on the year. This is no longer a small market cap company. It is over $2 trillion. It seems, at least in the public markets, in a handful of names, okay, it's just outright euphoria. What's it feel like out there in the private market space right now as far as valuations, as far as just everything? Do people think that we're probably, due for a little bit of a kind of pause here? And when I say pause, I don't mean crash. I don't mean this or whatever. Just like kind of take the temperature down just a little bit here.
I think where we are right now is a moment where there's an undeniable technology shift to the extent that anyone had any illusions last year that this wasn't real, that is this really happening? Is just another hype wave? I think that is gone. I think everyone understands that value, and a lot of value will be created both in publics and in private companies by investing in AI infrastructure, and the AI application layer. Last year, a lot of the focus was on the infrastructure layer, the building blocks of AI, the foundation models, the developer tooling. We're coming into this year with enough of the Lego blocks in place, if you will, that the focus is starting to shift toward application layer companies. What is that new generation of software companies and platforms that will be built on top of the AI infra and the cloud infra that we now have? And so there's, I think, a lot of excitement in the venture community in terms of investing in consumer AI, investing in enterprise software, investing in vertical SaaS with AI as well. I think everyone's realizing, though, that it takes depth in order to really get this right. And so I think capital and attention is starting to concentrate around companies that are really, led by systems thinkers like Aravind, who are designing, around LLMs in a really unique and valuable way to deliver value to the customer. I think the other thing that's really happening is we're seeing growth stage companies that maybe were not AI companies in the past, like Notion, like Inkit, like get a lot of acceleration by leveraging AI in order to accelerate their product roadmaps and essentially drive additional revenue for their companies. And so I think there's movement happening at all stages. I would say I'm still very, very optimistic. I think we're still very early in this AI wave. And I think it's going to be a very active year for new investments coming out of the venture community, both at the early stages and growth stages. And look, everyone's worried about the kill zone. Are you in OpenAI's kill zone? Are you, in Apple's kill zone? If you're, a consumer wearable, are you in, potentially Meta's kill zone? And so there's a lot of conversation around that. But at the same time, I think, everyone's realizing that there's just a lot more opportunity to harvest with AI. And so I think we're going to see a lot more capital pouring into the space.
All right. So Aravind, I'm going to give you the last word here. Throw all that other stuff out about sentiment, about valuation, about all this stuff. As a builder, as somebody who obviously started out as an academic and you're mission driven and you built this company and you have a team and you have a bunch of cash and you know where you're going, what excites you about this year and your positioning where you are right now, about Perplexity, about the landscape? Like what gets you out of bed every morning? It sounds like you don't sleep a whole heck of a lot, but what gets you up in the morning?
I mean, making the product better, as simple as that. Like, what keeps a lot of people have asked me the other questions. So, what keeps you up at night? And everyone expects an answer like, "Oh, AI taking over humanity" or something. No, just like product breaking, or like us not having enough capacity, or like somebody complaining on social media saying this query doesn't work. That is really what keeps me up at night, or keeps me awake in the morning as well. Just continually improving the product. Like, we deploy a new version every single day, make silent changes that just automatically improve the user experience 1% better a day. Like, we'll make it like 35 times better over the course of a year. And it compounds. Like, you can look at it, what it would mean at the course of like 5 years or a decade, right? So don't judge us by what we are today. Like, I think it's more about, like, 1 year ago when we presented to Anne, like, how the product was. We didn't even have an app. Like, it was just on the website, serving a few 100,000 queries a day. And now, like, we've grown so much, and like, I can only imagine like what it's going to be 1 year from now, right? And my job obviously is to keep that growth like very active, and that mentality to, like, be intense, grow as fast as possible, keep making user experience improvements every single day, keep improving the accuracy. We have three axes we care about, which is speed, accuracy, readability. If we improve these three things every single day, over the course of like many years, we're going to be unbeatable in terms of quality of the service.
All right, Aravind Srinivas and Anne Bordetsky, thanks so much for joining me on the Funders and Founders series for OK Computer. I hope you guys will both come back.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for having us, Dan.